little bit closer here.
Yeah, there you go. I can hear you.
We're all set.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the final 12th grade parent education session, College Readiness. What to expect and tips for the transition. We welcome back Jerry Gertzen of Lambert, Toohey, and Rucci to discuss all the important legal documents parents should be aware of before their children leave for college. And we're delighted to have Dr. Melissa Coffin, a licensed psychologist in town, discuss preparing our seniors for independent living and guiding parents for the transition, especially those with the oldest and only child or children, as we have a lot of twins in this class, as we who are going off to college. Jerry will kick us off. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wow. I want to say this is like the 7th year I've been doing this now. We started when my daughter was a senior at New Canaan High School. I've got 2 that went through the system. And I just felt that knowing as an attorney what we were going to have to send her off with in terms of documentation, it'd be nice to have, the other parents that were with me to also understand that. And so it's been like a string of 7 years doing this, which is great. I like working with the kids and helping out here. This is me, just a quick profile. I've been doing this for 35 years now. My own practice in Manhattan. And then I've been running the trust and estates practice at Lambert, Toohey, and Rucci for the last 15 years or so here in New Canaan. There's one of my partners who's one of my litigators, and I focus exclusively on trust and estates work. Here in New Canaan, my practice is focused on helping families like ours get through their estate planning, helping the kids out. And in the city, more focused on helping those in the arts with planning, and slightly different practice profiles, but it's all connected to trust and estates. So let me get over to, I'll do the healthcare documents first. Okay, so let's focus on that first. All right, there's the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA. Once your children hit the age of 18, you can no longer access their medical records without their permission. Okay, they're adults under the HIPAA rules. And so what we do when we have the students come in is think about signing the Connecticut statutory healthcare form. There's 4 parts to it. In Connecticut, we have the appointment of a healthcare representative, and that is a person who helps make medical decisions let me just see if I can enable editing and move this, there we go, who helps to make medical decisions if you can't. Right? Now, this is how they structure it here in Connecticut. See if I can get down. There we go. And so here's a summary of the 4 different documents that Connecticut uses to get this done for us. Now, you're appointing in the first document a healthcare agent. That's a person who helps make medical decisions if you're unable to. Okay? And the decision as to whether you're unable to is made by a doctor. Been in the car crash, you can't speak, you can't hear, you can't talk. Your healthcare agent can step in and help make medical decisions for you and work with your doctors in accessing medical records and such. There is a difference between that and I'll say like a HIPAA authorization, which allows the appointee under a HIPAA authorization to access medical records whenever. That I'm not doing here. That could be done separately, but I just feel that when a child hits 18, there may be circumstances under which they don't want their parents to know about their therapy sessions or a medical issue. They're an adult. And having that broad HIPAA authorization in hand might be too much. So I focus just on having the kids come in and look at, you're incapacitated, you've been in the car crash, more likely you've drank too much in college, you're being taken away by EMS. Who is the person that the EMS and the doctors can contact to help make medical decisions if you're in that position, okay? Next, and this is where we start to get into, the kids really having to think for a bit now. This is a living will. I'm going to try to just get this here. There we go, living will. Living will is a document that covers the circumstance under which you are now in an, read it, you're in an incurable, irreversible medical condition without the administration of life support, and in the opinion of your doctor, will result in a death within a relatively short period of time. This is a pull-the-plug document, as they call it on the streets, okay? And if you're in that condition, what you'd be saying here, if you want to withhold life support, you would initial these things. You would initial these authorizing the doctor withhold, and the medical professionals to withhold artificial respiration, artificial means of nutrition and hydration. You're having a heart attack, you're in a coma, don't perform CPR, things like this. Now, when the kids come in and we start to talk this through, they usually question it. They haven't thought about this before. And it's a tough thing for them to digest, I think. A lot of them come in not having read this, to be honest, and we're hitting them with it for the first time. And so I do get some students that are not quite ready for that yet. Others are, and they understand what it is they're signing here. But I will say that if I had to break it down percentage-wise, I would say 80% of the students that come in to see me haven't read it. And I always encourage the parents to try to get them to take a look at it before they come see me, because I don't want to be the person sitting there telling them for the first time, oh, by the way, this is heavy stuff, and can I have an answer? It's kind of, it's a little awkward. Second, I would say 70% of the students that come in to see me, having done this now a lot for the last 7 years, 70% opt into it, where they want to withhold. 30% or so say, I'm not quite ready for it. Can I change it later? And the answer is yes. Any of these documents that are done with me are amendable, changeable, revocable, and so they can change their mind, think about it, and come back and see me whenever to redo it if they'd like. Now, let me just get down to one other point here. Now, if you look at this, the way it's written, we do have, in Connecticut, there is another, let me see if I have it here. I don't know if I do or not. Let's just see here. Yeah, I don't think, yeah, I do have it. Let me just go to this one here. Now, let's get over here. Slight difference here. Let's see if we have it. Yes. Okay. So we have the option to withhold the life support in the event of a terminal condition. There was a change a few years ago in Connecticut that talks about females. If you're pregnant and you elect to withhold life support in that circumstance, and doing so would kill an otherwise viable fetus, the option here is to keep everything going until the baby is born. Okay, so that was a change that was made in Connecticut, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago. There must have been an issue. I mean, it makes sense. And most of the women of childbearing age would opt into that. Okay. Next, if the student wants to be an organ donor, this is part of the Connecticut system here. They could initial here. If not, they cross it out. And we just initial that. Appointment of a conservator in Connecticut. Connecticut has a system whereby judges can appoint a conservator to manage the finances of someone who is completely incapable of doing so, either by way of illness or an accident. And that's a court appointment. And here you're saying, well, if that circumstance arises where now I have a judge overseeing my financial life, I want this person to be my conservator, the person to do that. And here's where they'll name, their appointees. I always try to get it back up in all of these too. I get the question, well, can my husband and I do it together? And I'll go to New York on that for a second. New York changed the rule, I want to say 7 and 8 years ago, on that. Co's are difficult when it comes to healthcare appointees, because what's been happening, or what was happening, was there would be a fight between the appointees who would see things differently, and the doctors would get caught in the middle. So New York strongly recommends that you do one after the other in succession. You only have one appointee with a successor. That way, there's no fighting between family members. I was with a litigator in court a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of his cases involve, I was surprised to hear this actually, a lot of his cases involve litigating over whether or not to pull a plug. because of these sorts of issues. Either there wasn't this document signed, or you've got co's who are in there who see things differently and want judicial intervention. So keep that in mind, I would say, when you're thinking these things through. And I always default into New York on things like that. Not that Connecticut is, in any way underneath New York in terms of strategy and whatever, but New York seems to put a lot of thought into these sorts of things, and that's one of the issues that popped up recently that they've addressed. Okay, so there is the healthcare. Why don't I do this? Why don't I just stop here? So if there are questions on this now, I have the document in front of me, and I can answer those connected to any questions on the healthcare. Yes? No. I'm an attorney, trust and estates attorney in Manhattan, and I run the trust and estates practice at Lampertu and Rucci in New Canaan, and here in New Canaan. No, what happens is if you want us to help out, my daughters went through this 7 or 8 years ago, like I mentioned, and that's when I started giving these talks, just to let the parents know what kind of documents were important as the children went off to college. If you'd like us to help, yeah, I can give you our phone number at the end, and if you want to come in and see us to help out, we can do that. And I can go over, like at the end, maybe I'll just go over what we would charge and things like that. I reduce everything down to like a cost basis level, just to kind of help the kids out here, so it's not full freight. Yes, questions? Yes?
You mentioned that the HIPAA authorization was more broad.
I would say so. Yeah, I would say the HIPAA authorization talks about the appointee, the person that has the document in hand, can walk into a doctor and say, give me all of the medical records connected to this person. That's a powerful thing, right? And, if your child's in therapy or something like this, they might not want you to know everything about what's happening, or if they have a medical condition that's private to them, right? This is really connected more to, got the car crash. I can't speak. I want my father to help out making medical decisions. At that point, you can access medical records and such, right? So there is a difference there. I just don't like doing the HIPAA authorizations because I feel like the children might not quite understand the scope and the power of it. And it does give the parent the ability to walk into a doctor's office and access things that they might not want them to access. They're adults. And that's part of, I think that's also part of it. When the kids come in to see me, a lot of times the parents come in too, and I think this is a transition for them as well. It's not just the children starting to think for the first time, I have to start thinking about this now all of a sudden, I'm an adult. It's the parents who have a lot of questions for me too. As they're cycling through, my child is leaving, it's a big deal. It's a big transition for me. And I'm letting go in a sense, right? And they have to start making these decisions now. So, yes, question. Was there somebody back there? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah, okay. That's a good question. Yeah. Maybe I'll repeat the question. I don't know if they can hear, the listeners at home can hear us. The question was whether the documents are valid if there's a change in domicile. Yeah, right now they're domiciled in Connecticut, right? They're just going to college, but the position is that they're domiciled in Connecticut. We're doing Connecticut-based documents. If they go to Virginia, wherever they go to college, the documents are still Connecticut-based. There's a full faith and credit between all of the states with regard to these documents. They have to really honor them no matter where the child goes. So they're effective, they're valid. The triggering event would be, I would say, when these things are changed. Yes, if the child moves permanently, they get married, they want somebody else to do this other than the parents. Those are the sorts of things that I see that would be the impetus for a change in making, differences here in terms of domicile. Now, if they move to if they're going to college, again, in North Carolina, and they're just going to come back, and that's the intention, their domicile is still Connecticut, okay? They're just in college temporarily. So any doctor, anyone in the legal business would honor the documents that are signed here in Connecticut because they're domiciled here, okay? again, like I mentioned, the triggering events that would change appointees on this would be a marriage. That would be, you know, I have a spouse now, or I've moved, you know. Anytime someone moves permanently from me, I always recommend that they have, this is to a different state, I always recommend that they have local counsel review the documents, just to make sure that they're okay wherever they're going. And many times they do change them when they get to the new state. But now for the kids, no. Connecticut works. The only other thing I'll say connected to that is I do have some students who go to Europe, right? Like, again, most, or wherever, Australia, you know, I get this, or, you know, going to school in Scotland permanently or whatever. These are friendly countries. I think I would look at it that way. These are friendly countries that respect our law and the way we do things. So I would say that even in that case, the documents are still valid and should be honored wherever they go. If I do have a student, however, going to, you know, Edinburgh or something for 4 years, might recommend that they contact local counsel there too, and just to get a set done over there as well, because they're going to be there for a long period of time. So, you know, interstate, no problem. Intercountry, might want to take a look at it depending on how long they're going to be there, right? So, but yes, any other questions connected to the healthcare? Yes?
Really just covered this one. My question had been, does it ever expire? And it sounds like it really doesn't. And if they haven't changed it, you know, they're a 40-year-old.
Right. Question is, do the documents expire? And I've seen attorneys put in expiration dates on these, and I don't like doing that, and this is why, because if now all of a sudden you have a client that comes in and signs these documents with us, and they become disabled, right? And during the disability, the document expires. You can't have them to re-execute it. There's no way to re-execute it. They're disabled. They're mentally disabled or whatever. So I don't like putting expiration dates on these for that reason. Now, as I mentioned earlier, all of these documents are revocable and changeable at any point in time. So I don't like putting expiration dates on for that reason. And the documents are, and I make it very clear to the students when they come in. And look, not every child gets along with their parent. You know, that happens too. And they don't want their parents involved. It happens over time. I'm sure that's not happening here. But, so there are times when, you know, things are just different in life, and the appointee structures change. So the answer is no expiration, but they're revocable and changeable at any point in time. If your children come to see me, I'm working for them. And if they ever come to me and say, I want my mom or dad off of this for whatever reason, that's a confidential relationship that I have with them now, right? And while we're on that, maybe I'll just talk just quickly before I forget. I do explain to them that I'm working for them, right? And I go on to say, at the end of when we're done with talking and going through all of these with them, I go on to say, and I'm digressing a little bit, but you kind of moved into a segue. Sometimes I forget to talk about this. This is college. Kids, stupid things happen, you know. Kids get into trouble every now and then. It does happen. I go to my daughter at Lehigh. Their football team was terrible for decades, you know, just awful. And then all of a sudden, they started winning a championship. This was their last 2 years. They started getting really good. And everyone got crazy and excited. They ripped the goalpost down, right? And they're carrying the goalpost down Main Street and throw it into a river. There are arrests made, right? And some of the kids are getting arrested. And it could be a problem, you know? Dumb things happen in college. These are all good kids, but they're in college and things happen. So I always tell them, you know, in a circumstance like that, to never admit you did anything wrong. It's kind of like what your car insurance companies say when you're in an accident. Never admit you did anything wrong, because that is evidence now that could be used against you. You may have thought you did something wrong. You're a good kid and you're trying to cooperate and you're all of this, but you might not have done anything wrong. And if you say that you did, now you've got a problem, right? Because that's an admission that's admissible in court. So I talk about these things too. There's a little segue there for you, because sometimes I forget to talk about that at the end. But I always talk about that to the kids when they come in to see me too. You know, what happens if you get into trouble? If you're faced with answering questions from an authority figure, police or campus security, if you're not comfortable answering questions, don't stop and say, I don't want to answer anymore. And in fact, I have a lawyer. And so once that happens, the questioning has to stop, okay? Anyway, so there's that. Any other questions on the healthcare? All right, I'll just move on to a power then. Power of attorney, probably less relevant because many children don't have assets yet, but let me just see here. If we have it, yeah, there it is, okay. Power of attorney, this is statutory Connecticut power of attorney form. This deals with money, so we just went over the health, okay? This deals with money now. If the children have money, assets that need to be managed, if there's, again, that car crash and they need mom to go to the bank or something like this allows the attorney, in fact, it's called, who's the appointee under a power of attorney to act on their behalf. And it covers just about everything here. Connecticut also throws in under this long form, I'm sorry, did something just hit the deck? Okay. Connecticut also throws in on their long form power these optionals. I don't have the kids sign some of these, initial some of these, because I just don't think they're relevant. There's no disabilities here. But when we get down to I'll have them do this because this deals with now digital devices. If they need mom or somebody, whoever the appointee is, to check their digital devices, check email, they've been in the car crash, they need help, this allows them to do that. And W, which is next, I always have the children sign this as well because now this deals with intellectual property. A lot of our clients are artists and musicians, and they all sign this. Kids will do it too because they're out there going to be publishing things. They're working on projects, and so W would deal with that. If any intellectual property needs to be managed, they can do that with this. It allows for the care of pets and things, but this is the statutory Connecticut power dealing with money. Again, when it comes to a power, I usually have those held with me in our safes, and this is the reason why. Again, it's a powerful document. Doctors will always accept copies of what we just went over on the healthcare, right? But if you go into Bank of America down the street with a copy of a power of attorney as a parent saying, I need to get into my child's money, they're going to say, no, I want to see the original, right? And in the 35 years I've been doing this, unfortunately, I have seen, not on my watch, but I have seen it where somebody, the appointee, takes the power and goes and helps themselves to assets, right? Now I'm chasing them around, suing them, trying to get the money back that they just took using their power improperly. So it's a powerful document. So our protocol generally on the power is just to hold it and not release it until I talk to the attorney, the principal, and get permission to release it. If they can't speak to me, if they've been in the car crash and can't talk, I want to talk to a doctor, right? So this is just me employing a protocol that I find necessary when it comes to powers because of the history that I see sometimes and how they're abused, okay? All right, so there's that. There's the power. Any questions on the power? No? Okay. Let's go into then, let me hit FERPA. Okay, FERPA. All right, FERPA. Okay, so this is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, right? All right. This covers, again, the confidentiality of school records when it comes to the students. They're adults, again. Even though you might be paying the bills, right, and all of that, they're still adults that are in control of their own academic records. Without a waiver, you're not going to be able to get in there to communicate with professors maybe, or review academic records if that's what you want to do. You have to get permission from the student to get that done. Now, I'm assuming most of the acceptances are kind of done. Maybe kids are choosing, right? The kids will now start to go through like a parent portal as they go through the process of the admissions to the colleges. The parent portal sometimes will have this as an option as to, well, oh, by the way, what do you want your parents to see connected to, your stay here at school? And like my daughter at Villanova, forgot to do it, didn't do it, whatever. But I had her do this before she left, and I needed to communicate with this professor on something. I forgot what it was about. But she did sign this. I sent it over to Nova, and it works, right? So basically what you're doing here, the student is certifying that they are a dependent for federal tax purposes, and that now triggers their ability to waive this. And they would just sign this, and I would keep this I would keep this in the file for them. All of these documents, when executed, are emailed both, if they want us to email it to the parents and to the students. We always set up separate attachments for all of these. This way, if the nurse's office wants to see the healthcare, you're not also sending the power of attorney and everything else to them. So everything's done separately for the kids. And again, we put the college that they're going to in here and the scope of the term of the FERPA and how long it's going to be effective for. There are certain things that colleges can release about students. You're 6'10", you weigh 300 pounds, you play basketball for Villanova. They can release that to the public, all right? They can't release academic records, disciplinary records, things like that, medical information, none of that academic records. And that applies to parents too. So this FERPA waiver is used to help parents continue to communicate with colleges, about whatever. I found myself, when we were here in the high school, we're obsessively checking, was it the Power School or what's it called? Of the quizzes and all this sort of thing. I found that I just gave up. I was kind of interested maybe in the beginning to see who their professors were and what I'm paying for, but it just kind of, like, these are kids now, they're out there trying their best, doing their thing. I'm not going to sit there and watch every grade that comes in. That was me personally, So I think what you're going to find is maybe something similar happening, where you're just going to let them go do their best without, being on top of them about it all, right? But this it can be useful, It's still nice to have it, I'll say. Let's see. I think, any questions on the FERPA?
How would you suggest the kids store their digital copies of these documents?
Yeah.
How should they?
Yeah, I would say that, again, we're going to email, for me, and if you do it on your own, that's fine, but just have an email scanned-in version, a fully executed version of everything, because what will happen is, and we use these things. We use the healthcare. I mean, I had a client in, and I have permission to talk about this, not using her name, of course, but she was in maybe 6 months ago doing CPR at an airport, okay? Somebody's having a heart attack. The first thing the medics do is they're going to come to your phone, and they're going to press the top two buttons on your phone like this. I don't know if you could see that. And what's going to happen is, if you have it set up, you're going to have and I walk this through with the kids and the parents. You have your medical ID set up. You slide it over. Medics can now access who your appointee is here, right? Now, your appointee, who would be, I guess, you guys, right? You would have the digital versions of what I sent to you on your phone, or screenshot them or keep them in your email and accessible. And then you can show that to whoever needs to see it on the other end, doctors, whatever, EMS people, say, hey, I'm the person who's the agent for who's injured or whatever. So you would just have it on your phone, accessible, screenshot it, whatever, keep it in a file on your iPhone. But this is something that I say 80% of the students don't have set up, and similar for the parents as well, maybe, but it's a good thing to have. Yeah. So it's a good question, but so logistically, we try to get the kids through, what happens if something does go wrong? How do we get to the documents? Who's going to have access to them? And this is the kind of thing that we walk them through, Okay, I think that's it for that. I'm just trying to think if there's anything. I think that's about it. We're covering the healthcare with the 4 parts. We're covering the power of attorney and the FERPA. When the kids come to see us, we charge, if I do it, I can give you my phone number. It's a direct dial. It's 203-403-7734. I'll just throw up maybe my profile once more. But you can reach me here locally, not hard to find. Let me just see, I don't know where it went. And so what we do is we just reduce our fees down for the kids to $450 to help them with all of this, and the parents and answer questions, get the documents set up for them, which is about half of what I typically would charge, if somebody came in as an adult and needs help. Again, I started doing this just to try to help, and my kids were going through, and I thought it'd be a good idea to let the parents know what I've been thinking through with regard to the kids and these sorts of things. And I think that's about it. Any other general questions, anything else? That's it? I think that's it then. Yes, one more. Yeah, you can do it. The online services are there. You can do it. the sorts of things, the only, and I'm not looking, to get more, I'm not looking for business. I don't need it. But I'll say that the only thing that I can say is when the kids come to see us, right, there are questions, right? And sometimes it's helpful to have a third party who's not a parent walk them through some of the options. When we're talking about you're in trouble or something like this, now you've got a lawyer who can help if you're in then they're starting to think differently when they're in to see me, I'd say. I'm just talking as a parent now in making that transition from having parents do everything for them, right, versus maybe getting a third party now involved to try to help out a little bit, if they have questions that they might not be comfortable asking the parent, that sort of thing. Because I'll get what will happen is I'll get we'll start going through the healthcare, for example, right? And I'll get the look from the kid, right? It's like, okay, I haven't thought about that. And they kind of look at the parents a little bit, but they're looking more at me, which I find to be, I guess, helpful maybe for some of the kids, that helps answer the question. But yes, you can certainly do it on your own. That's the only advantage I would say to getting a third party, me or somebody else, maybe helping out. Okay, anything else? That's it. Thank you.
Can I steal this?
You need the laptop.
Maybe I'll go behind
Thanks.
you.
That's gonna go behind me? Okay. I guess I turned that. There we go.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, you said thank you. That was really helpful. Can you guys hear me? Okay? Okay. So I'm Melissa Coffin again. I'm a local psychologist. My practice is right on Elm Street. And I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about managing this transition to college. I think a lot when we're thinking about this, we're thinking about our kids, but I also really want to spend some time talking about you guys as parents, because I think sometimes we are second fiddle in this process. So we're going to talk a little bit about empty nest syndrome. I know you hear about the concept of empty nest or being an empty nester, but there actually is a psychological term and some research about this topic coming up that I think is just important to understand. Everybody knows Lisa D'Amour. She's so lovely and has so much out there on kids. And this quote is actually about students, but I think it really applies for us too. She says, "Stress occurs whenever we need to adapt to new circumstances, regardless of whether those circumstances are good or bad. Making the transition to college involves a tremendous amount of change, which accordingly causes a great deal of stress. We can support young people by normalizing the fact that they will naturally experience stress as they start college, and reassuring them that their stress will ease as they get to know their new peers, routines, and surroundings." I think this is really comforting for the kids, but it really applies to us too. Our stress will ease as we get used to maybe having less people in the home, getting used to communicating with your child differently. And so I want you to have this in mind for yourself too. So what is this empty nest syndrome? You can see this research is relatively recent, 2024, as they're trying to really understand, and I think it's evolving, what are all the different factors in empty nest syndrome. It's a phenomenon that arises as a result of parents' reaction to their child's independence and departure from home, initiating with the last child's departure and often continuing up to 2 years. And oftentimes these stages occur. So initially a transition from crisis and this initial move to self-regaining. Sometimes there's a period of mourning, grief, and loss. Sometimes there are avoidance or impulsive behaviors that can come up as a result. And then eventually there's adaptation and relief. Now again, this is only for folks that are meeting the criteria for having a syndrome type reaction. I think for the vast majority of people, they're not necessarily experiencing all of these phases, but maybe a shadow of some of them, or they're going through this maybe in a shorter duration. So I don't want you to think that you all have to buckle your seatbelts for 2 years of a difficult time, but just acknowledging and maybe paying attention to how am I doing in this transition? Am I noticing anything in myself that maybe I want to pay some attention to and get some help for, or set up some different patterns? I want to also acknowledge some factors that make having your children leave a little bit more complicated. Obviously, they say, right, we're only as happy as our happiest kid. And so if your child is stressed and having a difficult time adjusting to college, that obviously makes it more difficult for you as you are adjusting to the empty nest. I am a parent of multiples, and so I understand there's a lot of twin parents in this class, and so I want to acknowledge losing 2 kids at once or 3 kids at once is definitely an additional challenge to this transition, especially if maybe those are your only children, or also if you're a parent of an only child. That's an additional difficult factor just to acknowledge and take care of yourself around. The other, a big one that gets talked about a lot is your romantic relationship, your partner, right? Realizing that maybe there's a natural drift that occurs as you're parenting and you're driving to all the sports events and you're going to the dance competitions and all of that. And as the kids start to leave, you might look across the room and say, whoa, we haven't really spent some quality time together in a while. And that's not to say that that's a bad thing. I think it's natural sometimes that a drift can occur, but this is a good time to sort of look at each other again, maybe have some conversations about how are you feeling about this? How am I feeling about it? What do we want to do as we're approaching this major change and maybe retirement, right? At some point in the next several years as well. And if you feel like the drift is a pretty big one, maybe get some couples therapy, right? Go and get a neutral third party to talk to, right? To be able to say, how do we come back together in this new chapter of our life so we can support each other with all the time that you have left. I think that, in this town, as parents, I just have to say, I think everybody's doing an amazing job. We have some really excellent parenting happening. Even last night, the little boy was missing, and I heard, people were like, I'll get out on the street. Where do I go, right? It's just like the community comes together. Everybody is really doing an amazing job parenting and being there for each other and for their kids. And so what a tremendous change when you all are really plugged in and doing a good job to all of a sudden not have to do all that anymore. Also, there's some research, I don't know if y'all have heard it, but looking at the amount of time that we spend parenting versus what our parents and their parents were doing in the 60s and 70s, it's like double. Even for working moms, when back then most of the moms were not working to the same degree. 40% of the kids, I think, in the 70s had stay-at-home moms. I think the number's down to 20% now. And so it's really interesting that a lot of parents are working more and have more connectivity to their jobs, but are actually spending double the time in parenting. So it's such a transition to not have to do that to the same degree. Now, it's not like you're done parenting, right? Your kids can also access you in college. They're going to be coming home. It's just a little bit of a change, but it is a little bit less, and certainly less time in the car and in the transportation of it all. So acknowledging just that change. Also difficult if you're in the sandwich generation, if you've got an elderly parent or parents that you're taking care of, that's a unique challenge. And then for the women in the room, if we're going to throw in perimenopause and menopause and all the fun that comes with that, that also exacerbates how you're reacting to things and just everything going on in this transition. So having some care and just a moment to think about yourself and what you need as you go through this, I think is helpful. Okay, now, but what do we do? Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the kids now. So what you can do now for your kids. I didn't say in the beginning, but I work a lot with high school students and college students. They're one of my favorite age groups. I also work with moms, but what I hear a lot at this phase is they are panicking a little bit about some of these life skills. They're like, I actually don't know how to do laundry. I actually don't know how to cook a thing. They're kind of getting a little bit nervous about it. And I know that you guys are getting nervous about it. So I do think it's helpful to teach them how to manage their medications, cook some simple things. I was just talking to a client of mine, she's a junior in college, and she was like, my roommate literally doesn't know how to cook pasta. She doesn't know how to boil the water. She didn't know how to put the pasta in. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's a good reminder of that's a good easy one, right, that we can all handle with our kids. And so making sure they have some of these simple skills down now. And again, I would just encourage you, watch the vibe as you're trying to do it, right? A lot of my clients will be like, my parents are yelling at me, and they're like, you gotta learn it now because you're about to be independent, and then they feel really stressed, right? So do your best on inviting them to join you in some of these tasks, asking them what they might want to learn so that you guys can work together versus feeling this pressure. I mean, maybe they don't really want to learn how to cook anything. They probably won't need to cook for a couple years anyway. So see if you can join your kid on what you think they might uniquely need and help to fill those gaps. Your presentation was great on helping to think about how they're moving forward as an adult. And I would encourage them with their school to really engage directly. I used to work in a university counseling center, and I can't tell you the amount of moms that were calling saying, my kid is really stressed. Can you call them in their dorm room and have them come in to talk to you as a therapist? And I'm like, no, I can't go to their dorm and call them. Like, they have to call us to show up. So start that now and have them sort of practice that independence and making some of their own appointments and engaging with their university. Same with mental health resources. I mean, having worked in university counseling, there's great resources at the colleges and universities. Check them out now. Make sure your students knows where the counseling center is. They will offer usually free groups that are really great. And sometimes it's like a 4-week group on stress management or on breathing skills or whatever it is. And then usually most counseling centers now are just doing crisis management. They're not going to do long-term therapy, but it's a great resource for them to know where they can get mental health help and medical health on their campus. And then lastly, I would just say be open to a gap year. Just because they have been accepted into college does not mean that they are ready to go to college. You know your kids best. I would say if you have worries right now, that your kid is not going to be ready, this is a good time to be talking about it. And I think that was one of the blessings of COVID, that lots more people started taking gap years and taking breaks and not going to college right away. I think there's really cool things you can do in a gap year, from travel to internships to work to community college classes. There's ways to have them feel like it's a really useful year and have them build their confidence so that they can go and feel better about the start to school. And then what you're going to do then when you're moving them in, you are going to Bed Bath and Beyond them. You are going to get them all the things. And you know your kid. They might really want all the things, right? And so you might not have to do much. Or they may have no idea what they need to be ready to start this transition. You're going to help them. You're going to lean in. You know the things that they need. You're going to set them up financially, maybe deciding on a budget. You know, the Starbucks and the DoorDash and all that really adds up quickly. So maybe talking about the expectations with that. It's very strange. I do see in the last few years like a real reluctance at times for students to swipe into the cafeteria. So I think really talking to them about that, you're going to be paying for that. And so not to be afraid to use their swipes, especially if they're dining alone. That's so normal in college. It just doesn't happen as much before they get there. But really kind of educating them about that, getting them ready to use the resources that they have. I was listening to a podcast on empty nest stuff with Glennon Doyle, and she was talking about moving her youngest into college, and she was sanitizing the girl's room, and she looked across the hall and there was a mom wiping the girl's room, and she had this moment of like, this is our anxiety. We are all freaking out, and for some reason we thought that sanitizing the whole room down would be a thing we could do. And I think it's okay, right? If you need to sanitize wipe and that's gonna make you feel better in that moment, do it, but also know, like, there's only so much you can do. Deal with your anxiety on your own. Don't make that your kid's responsibility. You're gonna clean it as well as you can, and then we're moving on. And then I think it's helpful, again, you know your kids. Some kids are like gonna text you and call you every day, and some might not want to. And so maybe setting some expectations around that, like let's have a Sunday FaceTime, or I'll let you lead it, but just having a quick conversation at some point before they go, I think is a really helpful thing. And then again, we're avoiding helicoptering, right? I love your analogy of like, you know, maybe checking in on the classes initially and then feeling like, okay, I'm gonna let them do that. I don't know if you guys have heard the term lawn mowing, but I see it a lot in the youngers of like just removing all obstacles for the kids, right? Like they're gonna have to get over some challenging things in school, and so allowing some time for that and taking care of yourself. I think it's really painful as parents to watch your kids struggle and have a difficult time, and so just giving them some space to do that. I have noticed a trend that it's taking a little bit longer than it might have taken you or I to get comfortable in college for this generation. I think some of it is the phone, that they're looking online in their rooms with the door closed a lot more than back in the day when we didn't have access to that. So sometimes I am seeing that it's taking students sometimes into second semester to really start to feel more comfortable. And so just knowing that, if they're comfortable more quickly, great. But I don't think that's necessarily a sign that they need to transfer, that it's terrible. It might just be that we all need a little bit more time to look around and feel comfortable. And then what you're doing for you, trust in the parenting you have already done. So again, I know we talked about life skills, but you've already taught them so much. Don't feel like you have to cram it. You've done a great job. Make time to check in with yourself. The parents that I see that have done well in this transition have thought about, what is it that I want to do next? Is there a volunteering organization that I want to get more involved in or join? Do I want to go back to work? Do I want to start a new hobby? I've heard some suggestions of like, ask your kids, like, what do you think I should do? Like, what are things that you've seen me enjoy that you think I should get more involved in? And they can kind of work with you and talk with you about that. There's a lot of really cheesy metaphors and analogies about this phase in our life, right? Of like, focus on your wings, not the empty nest. You can still fly, right? I feel sort of horrified when I hear those things, but it is not the end of our experience, right? There is a lot ahead for us. And so really just seeing this as a bend in the road and a new chapter of our lives, and giving yourself some time to think about, what do I want to do for myself? What would feel good for me at this phase in my life? And most importantly is look around the room. There's a lot of us going through it. Connect in your relationships. Talk about how you're feeling. It is a hard transition, and some people are excited about it too. So any range of feelings is acceptable and okay as you're facing this transition. And lastly, some advice I think that works for kids and for parents is, this is a season of firsts and lasts, right? You're about to embark upon some of these celebratory final experiences that you feel and your kids feel. Do your best to try to be present in each one as it comes. This is a lot of change at once for them and for you, so it is okay to just go slow with all of it. It is okay to be bored, both for them and for you, as this change happens. Focus more on engaging and really diving deep into the things that you do have in your life and that you want to add in so that you get the most meaning from those. And then just being patient with yourself. This takes a little bit of time. There are a lot of resources out there. These are just some books that I think could be helpful. There's a lot of podcasts. Some of the college counseling centers, as I was looking around too, also, if you look them up, have some resources for parents. And so check out some of those and see if any of them are helpful for you. I hope that they are. And then this is a great quote. It is time to start something new. Trust the magic of new beginnings. This quote is from like the 1300s. So I was like, oh, okay. So right, this has been happening a very long time. We can trust in this. We are all going to be okay. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Okay. Thank you.
Nice.